We got to live in a world based on fraud, based on keeping people like Jamie Dimon and Lloyd Blankfein in Maseratis and 15,000 square foot houses in the Hamptons. That's the system we have to live in. I say bring on a new system. I do.
I think I've already clarified the question. That's not really the question. And
this is frightening coming from somebody of your stature. You're a PhD in economics. You are former assistant Treasury Secretary, very high, number 2 basically at Treasury, and you're saying that your assessment, not what you want, this is your assessment. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to go to Congress and say, well, we can let rates rise and the whole system's going to implode. What do you want? And they're going to choose, well, don't let the system implode.
Right.
And so we're just stuck with these basically criminal entities.
But what would you do, Greg? Would you say, oh, we'll let the system?
Yes, I would. I would have done it in 2008. Yes. I would have said, yeah, Lloyd Blankfein, you're fired. Jamie Dimon fired. Ken Lewis fired. Yeah. Oh, and incidentally, you need to talk to my people at the Justice Department. Right. I'm going to cover all the depositors for $6 trillion. That's what we're going to print, $6 trillion. And then we're done. That would have been far cheaper. We spent $16.1 trillion.
It's not that simple. The problem isn't just Jamie Dimon and the Goldman Sachs guy, Lloyd Blankfein. The problem is the deregulation.
Well, then I would have put in regulations after that.
The problem goes back to the Clinton administration. The problem is the repeal of Glass-Steagall.
And the Republicans wanted that too. You got to admit that. Who? They all held hands and sang Kumbaya and said, this is financial innovation.
It doesn't matter who wanted it. This is the problem. The problem is the financial deregulation, which included taking the limits off of debt leverage and a whole variety of other things. Now, why did all this happen? In my opinion, it happened because of the collapse of the Soviet Union and because the Chinese Communist Party has sidelined Mao and changed its approach. And all of a sudden, the Western world no longer needed to compete with communism and socialism. So they didn't need any social welfare. We had all this triumphalism of the neoconservatives, the end of history. American capitalism is vindicated. The Soviets collapsed. Socialism has collapsed. So we don't need all the stuff we had to do to keep our guys from going communist. We can get rid of the welfare state and we can unfetter capitalism and it will work even better. And you may remember it was the former Fed chairman, Alan Greenspan, who said that markets are self-regulating.
Yeah.
So all of this came for historical reasons, that the competition that people thought socialist or communist systems offered to capitalism was wiped out by their own failure. So this let hubris unleashed, and the hubris ran away with them. They had this massive deregulation. The deregulation has had all of these consequences. And so firing Blankfein or Jamie Dimon or whatever, or putting them in prison doesn't solve anything, because they were just creatures of this change, this great historic change that was a mistake. And so I think that if you were really on the spot and it was up to you as to whether or not they just paper over the rigging of the interest rates, because that's what the Fed does itself. That's what the Bank of England does. The Fed's always rigging the rates high or low. They rig them high if they're worried about inflation. They rig them low if they're worried about the opposite. And now they got this big banking crisis. So there's nothing unique in the rigging of the rates, except perhaps this overt participation by the banks themselves. But since the policy is designed to achieve that effect, what the banks are doing is not really out of line with the government's policy. And so, again, I'm not excusing fraud or saying it's good for us or that we have to have it. I'm just saying in the conditions that they permitted to arise through all this hubris and mistakes. If you just say, well, okay, we've been rigging it all these years. Now we're going to turn our backs and walk away and let the interest rates explode. And we're going to wipe out all the bond portfolios.
It's all based on fraud. Everything, all of our wealth is based on fraud. And aren't we headed for a collapse anyway? Really?
We probably are headed for one anyway, because I don't think they can maintain this forever. How negative can they drive interest rates? If every time they issue another $1.5 trillion in new debt, the prices of the bonds have to go up?
Yes.
How long can this go on? How negative can the interest rate get? There has to be a limit. And if there's not a limit that way, there has to be a limit from the fact that so much of the rest of the world is moving away from the use of the dollar. We have the BRICS, Brazil, China, India, Russia, South Africa, moving away from the dollar, settling their international payments with their own currencies.
They're running.
We have the Chinese and the Japanese doing the same thing. So the demand for dollars is dropping because it's not going to be used as much. And that implies the exchange rate of the dollar is going to go down. Now that means the value of dollar-denominated assets goes down. So how do you keep the price of a bond high when it's got negative interest rates, but the exchange value of the dollar is falling? So that'll blow it up, just that itself. But you can't expect the people who put this system in place in order to try to rescue the serious mistakes from deregulation to say, we're going to blow it up. It's much better for them if some outside factor blows it up, because then they can blame that factor.